Hi, I'm Michelle Begue with a look at what's happening in Latin America now. But first, our news trivia. The Andean condor is the national symbol of which South American country? We'll have the answer later. Let's start in Argentina with my colleague Joel Richards, who has a report on the inaugural ceremony of the new president, Javier Milei.
He campaigned for the presidency with a chainsaw in hand. Now in office, Javier Milei has come good on his campaign promise. On Sunday, after being sworn in as Argentina's president, the self-proclaimed anarcho-capitalist said economic shock therapy was the only alternative for the country as it wrestles with the worst economic crisis in decades. Then on Tuesday, Argentina's new government announced its first measures, a sweeping austerity package that includes a 50% devaluation of the peso. It's the country's largest devaluation since 2002. As well as halving the value of the country's currency, or in other words, halving the value of people's wages, Milei's economy minister, Luis Caputo, outlined a series of measures which include cutting the number of ministries down from 18 to 9. They're also cutting energy and transport subsidies. Several taxes have also been increased. The new government says that reducing government spending is the only way to solving the country's historic economic problems. There will be additional support and benefits to offset the impact of these measures on low-income sectors. However, there is a widely held feeling that hard times are to come for Argentina.
And now let's go to Peru, where my colleague Dan Collyns has the latest on the release of former President Alberto Fujimori.
Michelle, families of the victims killed under the orders of former Peruvian President Alberto Fujimori have protested at his release from prison. They are relatives of 25 people killed in 2 death squad massacres in the early 1990s, for which Fujimori was convicted and sentenced in 2009. Alberto Fujimori, 85, was granted a humanitarian pardon despite a request from the Regional Inter-American Court of Human Rights to delay his release. The former president has been serving a 25-year sentence for corruption and human rights violations. Fujimori was originally granted the humanitarian pardon on Christmas Eve of 2017, sparking massive street protests. But months later, the pardon was overturned and Fujimori was sent back to prison. His supporters credit him with stamping out the violent Shining Path movement and putting the economy back on track after out-of-control hyperinflation. But most believe he ruled with an iron fist during his decade in power in the 1990s, a period marked by rampant corruption and widespread human rights abuses.
And Colombia proudly announced the results of an operation involving 42 countries to stop the drug trade. Nearly 200 tons of cocaine were seized over a month and a half of efforts led by Colombia. Officials from the country announced 574 arrests, as well as the seizure of 176 tons of marijuana, 113 boats, 6 semi-submersibles, and 2 aircrafts. Navy officials say this is the biggest international alliance to be formed against narco-trafficking. In 2022, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime said 90% of drugs are transported via the sea. In Brazil's Rio de Janeiro, caimans are struggling to survive with the growing population. Check out these images where caimans are left to swim in polluted waters of a lagoon in the megalopolis of Rio. The name of the region where these lagoons are located is the Valley of the Caimans. That term comes from the language of the indigenous Tupi-Guarani tribe, but the description is no longer the reality. The reptiles are being pushed out of their valley by urban expansion and the pollution that comes with it. Local biologists say caimans, which are related to crocodiles, are being threatened with extinction. Now let's check out what stories we're following for next week. We continue to follow the dispute over Essequibo between Venezuela and Guyana. This week, Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro met Guyana President Mohamed Irfan Ali. Tensions have been mounting over the oil-rich region as Venezuela claims the territory is theirs. The bilateral meeting took place in a neutral place, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where they were accompanied by the Prime Minister. It was promoted by Brazil's President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, as Brazil neighbors both countries. And now the answer to our news trivia. The answer is all of the above. The Andean condor is the national bird of several South American countries. They include Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, and Bolivia. Did you know it is the largest bird of prey? Unfortunately, Andean condors are suffering widespread decline and are endangered in many parts of the world. These images were captured in Colombia with a camera trap, part of an ongoing effort to raise awareness of their importance. Farming populations have tried to hunt down condors and poison them out of a fear of them killing their livestock. The Andean condor is considered the strongest vulture on Earth.
And that's it for this week. We'll see you again soon on Latin America Now.